What is going on, everybody? Back with another video. So today is going to be another ramble video. I want to ask somebody, or ask everybody, a serious question, and that is, what is your benchmark knife? Now, what I mean by that is, when I first started collecting knives, and then I, started using them more and more, I noticed that obviously between all the different knives, there's going to be different fit and finish issues, different, for example, just quality issues in terms of like lockup, deployment, handability, cutting ability, ergos. There's so many things to consider when you're buying a knife, and there's so many things to consider when you go to use a knife as well, and what these things mean in terms of, like, for example, fit and finish. What is that worth to a collector mainly, and what is that worth to an actual user, daily user of knives? It's going to be completely different. So, but I'm just interested in overall, what is the benchmark knife when you buy a new knife and you have an idea what a knife should be in terms of fit and finish, lockup, jimping, what type of lock, whether it be liner or frame lock, the benchmade access lock, SOG arc lock, back lock, anything, right? Let's see, I think I mentioned jimping. And the smooth deployment, rough deployment, ease of deployment, flipper, non-flipper, thumb stud. What I'm trying to say is that for everybody, there's always got to be that either the perfect knife, the ultimate knife, or even the penultimate knife, meaning the near perfect knife, the one that just falls, in second place. I understand for a lot of people there is no such thing as a perfect knife, just because it doesn't exist, because it's really hard to find a knife, especially for really picky users, so to speak. Because as a knife collector and user myself, over the years, and it's been around 8 years, going on to like probably well into a decade now, if you count all the years before that, before I actually started getting really into collecting. I've experienced a lot of knives, and I've used a lot of knives, and for the most part, knives, in my progression to use and collect, knives have taken on a whole different meaning for me. And because of that, my idea of a perfect or a near perfect knife has changed as the years went by. So let me stop rambling for just a second, and now we'll talk about these knives on the table. These three types of knives, three types being like Strider, CRK, and Hinder, they represent, at one point in time, the benchmark that pretty much a lot of knives were based off of for users and collectors alike. Because for a while there, these were like the three most talked about that I've experienced when I go online on YouTube and on the knife community. Now, I will have to say that I don't really hear too much about Striders anymore. I still hear a lot about Sabenzas, and I still hear a lot about XM18s, but as a community as a whole, I kind of noticed the market trend has been moving away from these three brands a little bit, at least. CRK is still really up there for a lot of people. I know for a fact that a lot of people swear by CRK, and then there's some people who love Striders, then there's some people who love XM18s, and that's their idea of a perfect or near perfect knife. And that's my question today. What is your benchmark knife? So it could be, the Striders over here. We got the SMF, we got the SNG, we got the PT, and then in the middle we got the CRK Umnumzan, and then of course we got the iconic Sabenza 21, and of course the very iconic Hinder XM18. So these knives on a whole ticked a lot of boxes for many people. But because knives have been evolutionized with technology, and for some, the funny thing is the meaning of knives in terms of the way they're being looked at and viewed have really progressed and moved away from when I first started about 8 years ago. For example, this is one of my earliest knives here. This knife is not exactly particularly well made, but it works. There's a hint of blade play. The lock, while you really can't see it because of this giant lock bar tab on here, is moved all the way so it's contacting the right-hand side scale, or the show side scale. And let's see, there is up and down play. So in terms of like basing on knives of today in terms of the standard. And because we are knife collectors and users, we are rather critical on our knives when we review them and use them, right? And by today's standard, this knife is a poor example of a knife, really, if you go by that. And similarly, if I can speak, the Boker Plus A square, which I am picking on a lot because Boker Plus are just crap now to me. This is an extremely example of a poorly made knife in terms of by today's standards, right? It doesn't affect functionality at all, by the way. I just wanted to know that as much as a piece of crap as this A squared is, I've been using it, I've been cutting with it, it works just fine, you know. Even before the spa treatment, the knife still is able to cut. Not very well, but it is still functional, right? It locked up, it was fine if you can get deployed. My main problem with this is the way it's put together in the fit and finish, right? This SOG Pentagon Elite, I'm sure when it was brand new it was just fine, but because of years and years of use, it has become a poor example of a knife. Like I said, up and down play, left and right blade play. Well, I did send it back to SOG for spa treatment where they sharpened up the knife and they did correct the blade play a little bit, but after a little bit of use, blade play came back again. You can actually hear it clicking. But, and then of course the lockup is all the way to the right hand where contacts. And now these are big no-nos for users and collectors alike. So again, my question is, if you were to pick one knife to base all your other knives on to see if this is again the perfect or near perfect specimen of a knife, it's early in the morning. I apologize, I can't speak. What knife would it be? Would it be the iconic Striders or the iconic CRKs or maybe the iconic XM18 or some other knife that because by today's standards everything's different, everything's running on ball bearings, everything's you know, has flippers on it, everything has to be like this, everything has to be like that, you know, fit and finish wise. I think in a way, you know, for collectors, especially for collectors, these things have to be perfect. You know, for users of knives it doesn't really necessarily matter, and I'll be doing a separate video on that. On real world YouTube reviews versus the theoretical, you know, YouTube reviews, sort of. So I'll get into that more on the other video. So I just want to give you my example. What I would think was the near perfect specimen of a knife. I don't really have a perfect specimen. I'll just be right there. I'll just be honest about it right up front. So if I was to go near perfect, I would actually have to pick pretty much almost anything from zero tolerance, and this would be my example of a production knife that pretty much gets it right almost all the way around. All right, now if I was to take away for example the different models, because ZT has a ton of models and it's not all going to tick the correct boxes. For me, the 0620 have always been like kind of like the almost the penultimate, almost a near perfect production knife for me. The reason being is this, it's got a very nice usable blade shape. Not the overly aggressive American style tanto, but you know, it's got a nice tanto point on here that is usable, relatively thick behind the edge, and I mean the stock is thick, so it's really nice and strong. It's got a thumb stud that can be open left or right, meaning it's, you know, you can use it with either hand. It's got a wave opener, which you know, it doubles as a thumb ramp. Relatively decent jimping on the handle spine, not really so much on the thumb ramp, but the ease of takedown because it just uses you know, regular Torx. You got this big, you know, whatever a screw on there for the pivot screw is really easy to take apart. You know, pocket clip, you know, is okay, it's functional, it's blob, it's functional, right? And then you got a nice beefy frame lock along with a lock bar insert, right? And on top of that, this is not run on bearings. And back to my original saying that about bearings, I think they're overused. I really truly think they're overused because they're in everything right now. My Boker SD3 that I just unboxed, and I actually took that thing apart, which I'll be putting a video up on that as well. That runs on bearings. You know, to me, a non-flipper knife, there's really no reason for it to run on bearings. And this is just glass smooth. And look at that, the centering is just dead on. Very extremely smooth knife, and I guess there's really no need to flick this knife out, but you can if you really wanted to. So this is one prime example of a kind of a, not the ultimate knife, but a near ultimate knife in terms of fit and finish, design, you know, just everything. Now, I will show you one knife that really comes extremely close to being the near perfect knife for me. Now, the only reason why this knife is not perfect for me is the fact that my knife tastes, so to speak, have changed over the years since I bought this knife. This is the Marty Young, well, technically there's really no name to it, but I call it the DCMY, which is basically just my initials along with Marty Young's initials, because it is a collaboration. I designed the knife and I had Marty make it for me, and he did a bang-up job on this knife. And of course, because of that, this is going to be pretty much near perfect. Now, the only thing I didn't have control over is the overall quality, fit, and finish of the knife, but he hit that out of the ballpark. So let me walk you through it. This knife features about a 3.5-inch blade, and it was, at that time, the perfect size carry for me. Right now, I probably would prefer a slightly smaller blade, but again, that couldn't be helped because at that time, I wanted a 3.5-inch blade. Yeah, it's a nice thumb ramp. The jimping on here is pretty hard cut. I mean, this thing holds your fingers in. The jimping on the back of the 620 does not hold your fingers in, all right? So that's perfect. Got the thumb disc for dual opening, all right? It's got a recurve and a very a nice belly for pretty much almost any kind of cutting task you can imagine. In my real world test, this is probably by far one of the most usable blade shapes in my experience. It's got a liner lock, which I prefer over frame locks, and the reason being is good. I like symmetry, and you know, while I would concede that having a frame lock is probably safer, you know, because you're gripping down on the frame while you're working, which means the lock really can't disengage, right? But at the same time, in real world tests, I've never had a knife fold on me ever, no matter how stupid the lockup was, because you're pushing down on it, which means the force goes against this way on all your cutting tasks. There's no reason why the knife would fold back the other way unless you're being completely careless with your knives. So far, in my 8 years of using knives, I've never had a folding knife fold on me, no matter how bad the lockup is, all right? But of course, your mileage may vary. So it has a liner lock, and guess what? No lock stick. This thing is smooth. When it locks up, there's no up and down. There's no side to side, and I'm really torquing on this thing too. There's no side to side. And best of all, check this out. This thing is on phosphor bronze washers. Just smooth. Extremely smooth. And this is done without the use of bearings, all right? It is bolstered with carbon fiber, titanium bolsters at that orange peeled finish. These two are like by far my most favorite handle materials ever. I used to want to get like Timascus, Mokutai, you know, all the other exotic materials. But in the end, as a user, those materials don't really, it's not really conducive to being used. You know what I mean? Because like I said in my previous video, when you have like really beautiful materials, I tend not to use my knives. This one I will use, and I have used. In fact, I've used it so much, had Jeff Juice help me sharpen up the edge on there. So, and it was daily carried. And it is a full custom knife. This thing cost me, I think it was $525, I believe it was, for all the work that he did, which is very reasonable considering it's a full custom-made knife. You know, carbon fiber scales, full titanium scales, liner lock, forgot to show you this, a gear pattern backspacer that actually was able to hold your fingers in, and you know, and of course a full custom design, meaning I actually drew this design out and sent it to him, right? Oh, and here, check this out. Got a 3D milled pocket clip. I love 3D milled pocket clips. I'm not a fan of spring clips anymore, although both are very equally as functional, but a 3D milled pocket clip is so much cleaner to me, and that's why I prefer them. I mean, it doesn't really have anything to do with functionality because, again, both function really well in terms of real world usage. All right, so this is my near perfect knife right here. And that is my question to you, and I would love to hear back from everybody. When you buy knives, what do you base everything off the knife of? And when I mean everything, I mean everything. You know, from the type of pivot it uses to like handle materials to like you know, the pocket clip style, the blade shape. You know, fit and finish, of course, is a huge thing for all of us users and collectors alike. And I base everything off of this knife. When I get a knife, I'm thinking like, does this look, feel, and perform like the Marty Young right here in the middle here? Now I know it's probably unfair comparisons to many things because there is a lot of aspects to it. So I'm thinking usually when I do compare them, I will always say, is the fit and finish and deployment anywhere close to the Marty Young? And again, that is my near ultimate, near perfect knife. That is my benchmark knife. So. Okay, well, I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm gonna turn off the video. Feel free to leave me questions and comments in the comment section, of course, and let me know. Let me know what your a perfect or near perfect knife that you base all your other knife purchases on, and during uses and fit and finish quality. What's the knife that you usually go for? All right. So, any questions, comments, leave it below. Take care. Have a nice day, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.